Hey guys, today I'm here with Christina Fletcher, spiritual alignment coach, energy healer, author, speaker, and host of the podcast Showing Up Whole, which I love. I think you feel just reading around your site and stuff. I'm pretty sure you feel exactly how I feel about how we section ourselves off into these little pieces in an effort to explain who we are and how we are to other people and our ideal client and all of these things. And it's so hard to do that in our field because our
Mhm.
field kind of encompasses everything. We're a
Yeah,
whole individual, and that stems out into every aspect of life. And how do you put that in an elevator pitch?
I know, absolutely. And it never fails. We were just talking a little bit about like ideal clients and things like that before hitting record. I always have to laugh when I do any work on that because I coach like when I look at my clientele, I have everyone from, you know, women my age who I really identify and usually target market to men who are in corporate to then I have a few teenagers that I work with. And I kind of go, how do I even like begin to sum up what that is? But it's because as people, we are multi-layered and we have this beautiful essence within ourselves, and we all need to align to that essence, whoever that shows up to be. And that's what I do. So, how do you show up whole as yourself? You are your own individual self,
And
and
it
that's what needs
changes
to be
every
cemented.
single day.
Mm. Oh, yeah,
We're
absolutely.
malleable.
Well, yeah, your values, you are observing things differently, you're growing, you're changing, and I think we live in a world which tries to make you forget that you're an ever growing, ever expanding being. It's like sum it up, know what you want to do by 18 and check off the boxes and then you're done, and you'll be able to retire and do what you want then. And life doesn't work like that. We're working against a natural flow when we try to squeeze everything into box.
Yeah, most
So
of us end
yeah,
up so
that's for sure.
stressed out in our 20s or our teens and 20 years trying to figure out what we're kind of most of us are pretty lenient a little bit into our 20s because even though like yes, we are entering our college years and we need to figure out what we want to major in and what that means, what we want to do for the rest of our lives. So what do we want to get a degree in? We feel like it's okay because you have a couple of years of basics first and things will
Mhm.
unfold how they unfold and we'll figure it out along the way. But then your early 20s come along and you've been in college a couple of years and things are not unfolding and you are not any more clear than you were when you started this, and we start to panic.
Yeah, absolutely. My eldest daughter is 21, and it makes me smile when she's like, "Well, I really need to have my life put together." Because I go, "Who's telling you this? Your life is never put together." I'm like, "That's a fallacy. It doesn't happen." Because
Doesn't
we're
matter.
always growing and changing, and it shouldn't be together. It's what are we striving for if we're wanting to just it all, in place. And it's a fascinating thing because honestly, I don't know that many people. There's doctors and lawyers and people who literally got the degrees in the big topics. I was a theater grad. This was not like I wasn't. I graduated from theater school. I studied religion and like world religions in university. Life moves on, and
I don't know if you can hear me, but we froze. It very well may be from my end. Uh-oh. That's okay. There you are.
sorry, I just froze. I do apologize.
And it may be
All
from
right.
my end. It's hard to say. I've been having some internet issues this morning as well.
It's all good. I live in the country, so sometimes it gets a little blippy as well. So
I also live in the country. Where are you located?
I'm actually over in the UK.
Okay, cool.
So yeah, so we just moved down to Somerset, in the UK near Glastonbury. It's kind of a spiritual home of ours. So we sacrificed really, really, really good internet to live near our spiritual home.
You don't sound like you
Just kidding.
started out there though.
No, no, I'm originally from Canada.
Okay.
So, but I married an Englishman 22 years ago, and we kind of had a magical coming together. And yeah, we've kind of been back and forth. We moved to Canada, back to Canada for a while, And then we ended up back here 4 years ago.
Well,
I always
bouncing
wanted
back.
to live
Oh, me too. Me too. I I've never
off.
enjoyed where I'm located, and I've had so many cultural problems and societal problems, and I just I always thought something was wrong with me. And I went to therapy because like I could not fit in anywhere, and none of the therapists were any help. Every single one of them was like, Savannah, you're completely normal if we dropped you in another location. It's just because you live in the South. I'm like, well, that's great, but I'm stuck here. So, you have any advice for being stuck here? Because their only advice was you just need to move. I'm like, wonderful. Anyway, um,
That's so funny. Well, and it's always fascinating why, because I didn't feel at home in Canada. And I always find it interesting. It's like, what qualities do we get from the places we're born in?
mhm,
Because we have to be born in a place for some reason, and we have to choose to come to that platform for some reason.
mhm.
And I find it fascinating to explore those reasons, and then to look at manifesting ways to move. Because there's always when the time comes, I'm sure you'll be able to relocate. So it's always an
Oh,
interesting thing.
maybe. I'm so deeply rooted here. The only way that we would leave really is if we could take the 20 people that we need to take with us. And that's not really something that would happen, most likely.
Just need lots of travel then.
Yes,
Mobile living.
absolutely.
Yep.
That's the
Yep.
goal.
There you go.
Going back to even doctors and lawyer before we froze, even doctors and lawyers and whatnot don't have their life put together completely from
No,
no, nobody does. Not a single person on
nobody does.
it has their life completely put together. It only appears like they do, or they may have it put together in certain areas.
Yes.
But comparing ourselves to the image that people throw in the forefront for you to look at isn't, it's not a complete image. It's not whole.
It's not hope. Um, it's really, really important to not identify yourself with the roles that you play.
I like
It's
that.
really, really important not to identify as the roles you play. I started off as a parent coach when I started my work, and the whole structure of my parenting work was always, you know, release the role of being a mom and build the relationship instead.
Mm,
And then I left parenting as a focus and moved to spiritual life coaching. And that really is because I realized that everyone was still always trying to keep all the roles. It was
mhm,
like we even talk about it's like, well, the doctors and the lawyers, those are all individual people. And it's really important that we now identify as ourselves.
mhm,
I even had a conversation taking this even beyond, we talk about countries. We talk about how we identify as our country. It's like, oh, you're an American. Oh, well, I'm a Canadian who now lives in England. We've actually moved beyond even those constraints, which really kind of, I'll have people come up to you, it's like, oh, you're Canadian. Oh, you're polite. It's like, I'm sorry. No, this is not like I am polite, but that's not like some
not
Canadian
because I'm
default.
Canadian.
you know, it's important to actually step aside from all the labels, all the roles, and actually say, so wait a second, who am I? What do I value? What do I feel called to? What's my integral presence of myself? What's the craziest idea that I have that I could create? And that actually is like my highest self pushing me along. Like where is the integral flow? And I would just love to see a world where we all stepped into that space, where we were brave enough to actually ditch the restrictions that we've been passed down and the beliefs of, oh, we shouldn't. I think I came into this world to actually play with those boundaries because I've always been a bit of a rebel. And so it's fascinating to just explore who you are and grow into that and grow into that and grow into that. And new chapter, new chapter. It's exciting.
Yeah, I talking about coming back around to being
Mm,
dropped in locations, and you mentioned something. Were you talking about soul contracts, like where we decide what we're gonna do before we get here?
I would say so. I mean, I'm a firm believer that I'm a firm believer that you kind of are kind of going, what's my next playing field before you arrive here, and you kind of drop yourself in to a place where potentially you're going to have the most challenges.
The most contrast, yes.
The most contrast, because who as a spirit wants things easy? As soon as we're human, we're like, are you crazy? Why would you do that? As a spirit, why would you want it easy? Why would you want things just unfolded? Instead, you're going to go with the places where you go, the Abraham Hicks quote of, when you know what you don't want, you know what you do.
Mm,
So it's this concept of, well, wait a second, you get to actually feel into what you don't want.
mhm,
What don't you want? And then how do you spin that around and going, okay, well, for instance, talking about being dropped in a place that you don't feel like you belong. Well, what does that tell you about yourself? Suddenly you're in the challenge of, do you give up parts of yourself, or do you step into the unknown and lean into how you actually become a beacon? I'm a big believer in like lighthouses of, the more you become a beacon of yourself, the more you give people permission to do the same for, themselves. Lots of people don't feel like they belong.
mhm.
So it creates this interesting fabric, this interesting patchwork quilt of experience. And you always get to choose whether it's going to lean into, well, we need to manifest something different, or we deeply appreciate living in the contrast and living in places. And how do you find that appreciation? It's like playing it's like playing in a sandbox as kids, right? It's like, what can you create with this? Or are you just going to complain that it's like, in your clothes, in your shoes? Because we can all do that too.
Yes, I agree completely. And so many of us are just, I don't know, comfortable in discomfort. You mentioned that so many
Mhm.
people don't feel like they belong. I'd even venture to say that most people probably don't feel like they belong. We've just been conditioned to
Agree.
conform. And
I agree.
we've been told that being a good person, a good boy, a good girl, good whatever, means conforming and following the rules that are set out
Mhm.
before you and not questioning those rules. And just, yeah, I also am kind of rebelly, but not because I'm trying to be bad. And that's the thing that I have told people till I was blue in the face. I was in trouble constantly as a kid, but not because I was doing anything wrong, but
No.
because I was questioning what I was being told to do. Like, okay, but
Yep.
why? And nobody wants to tell you why.
Yep.
But you just
No.
listen, I said so. I'm like, well,
Yep.
if you watch a movie with a group of children who go and get themselves in trouble, it's always because an adult told them not to do the thing, but then didn't explain why. If you just explain why, then maybe they would have not done the thing. But you
Yeah.
didn't tell them why, so the mystery was left out to it, and so they had to go figure it out themselves because they
Yeah.
wanted the answers. And
Yeah.
now we have like the privilege of the internet to where we can just Google our answers and we're a lot safer in doing that. But before that, we had to actually venture out into the world, and that could be kind of
Yeah.
dangerous.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But it's so funny because just that simple question, like you said, just answer why. And the funny thing is most of the time, people who are, if you're asking why you need to conform to something, half the time the people you're asking, they
Don't
don't
even.
know why. Like it's like, I
Uh,
remember when I was exploring being Catholic for a while, and I would ask, well, why? Why this? Why that? Why this? And I was always told, it's a mystery. And I was like, okay, that's actually not really answering anyone's question. That's not an answer. And it's a fascinating kind of thing when you actually start pulling at the threads, how quickly something unravels.
oh yeah.
And I think I chose in this life to come in as someone who liked to pull the threads.
Mm.
My mom used to say that it was very, very healthy that I was like her last child. So I was like number 6. So she knew how to like answer questions because, she'd like gone through quite a few children of saying, no, just accept it. And she was like, okay, not
Didn't
this
like
one.
me.
This one needs some answers. So I was lucky that. But even then, I was always in a place of wanting to conform. Like, and this is what's interesting is you want to conform. You want to actually fit in.
Mhm.
And then all of a sudden you get this little thing of saying, but why? But I can't. Like it feels so uncomfortable. I mean,
Mhm.
I the things that it has led to. I mean, even as we speak, I'm yes, we moved down to Somerset. We gave up good internet in order to move down to our soul space. In order to do that, we actually live in 2 trailers. We moved from a 3-bedroom house with like, all our kids had like all their stuff. We had all our stuff. We had everything put together. And we saw an opportunity of kind of escaping the conformed what you're supposed to need.
The Matrix.
And it was easy. And it's a fascinating thing. We're like, okay, we're going to give this a try. This office is built in a little tent space outside our trailer. It is, a reinvention of the wheel. And it's amazing watching how often you get a little voice in the back of your head that goes, okay, but everyone else doesn't do this. Do you share this stuff online? Do you talk about this online? Like it's a fascinating thing how you have to align to listening to what feels right. And still the outside chatter that goes, really? Really? Interesting thing.
Absolutely. I also had a deep desire to conform and fit in and be liked. And no matter how hard I tried, it's not who I am. It's not me. And it took us so long to figure out why, but that's okay. And
Yep.
you have to forge your own path though. You have to, because again, circling back around to having your life together, I would say instead of trying to figure out how to get your life together, just figure out how to be happy. Because if you're chasing a goal that can't be caught in getting your life quote unquote together, but happiness, you can't wait until XYZ until you get, because we're all going to die sooner rather than later. So you want to like start getting on that happiness thing sooner rather than later. And that's not me trying to be
Yep.
morbid, that's me trying to be realistic.
No, no, I mean it's true. None of us are getting out of this alive. Like
Right.
that's just like it's just the way it goes. And you go, well, um, it's an interesting thing when people have these big goals. I do believe in the power of manifestation. I do believe in the concept of consciously creating your own reality. I do believe in setting intentions and watching them unfold. However, what I have discovered is very similar to exactly what you're saying. What you want is you only want it because of how you think it will make you feel. And therefore, then, if you know how you would like to feel, then why not look for small steps that you can take to feel the way you want to feel now? What's fascinating is often when you resonate as the feeling that you want to feel now, it's amazing how things start to shift and you watch things transform around you in order to match that feeling state. So there's an interesting process within it of not worrying too much about what needs to change, finding the present moment and taking care of your own emotional state, aligning to your highest self. But then from that, the juicy bit is that then everything else conspires around you as well. So it does reflect back and forth. And you're right. It is a question of how can you even happiness can be a little elusive. It's like I think it's a how this is why I call my show showing up whole. How do you feel whole? How do you find alignment to the person you want to be? How do you feel present as that person? How do you know, when you start to be able to not use the outside world as a judgment of whether things are working, but actually go, oh, I'm feeling a little out of alignment to myself. Okay, where do I need to shift? What do I need to do to feel better? How do I raise my own vibration or my frequency or just feel happier? Or what can I do? When you actually start taking responsibility of what's going on inside, then everything does change. And you do feel whole in yourself. So therefore, then you're not only dealing with anything that's in front of you, you do feel a sense of fulfillment that even if something happened tomorrow and you were no longer in this human form, you could say, I was whole in myself anyway. It's not over there. And I think you make a valid point that none of us are getting out of this alive.
Yeah, and
Time we stop.
people will try to corral you back into conformity once you start living your authentic self if it looks different than what people think it should look. And that's why it's really good to you know focus on internal validation rather than external validation for sure. And it's oftentimes very counterintuitive as well. There's a I was talking about this right before the episode, actually. I was talking to my friend who also has her own business, and the busyness of entrepreneur life and the hustle and all of that. And I told her, I
Hmm.
said, it's funny because all of the experts say that the less you do, the more it unfolds. And it sounds super crazy, but I used to, I would not give myself any downtime. I had to be productive 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. There was no rest for the wicked in my life. Like I was go, go, go
Hmm.
for years. I ran myself into the ground and had basically nothing to show for it in my business. The moment I gave up, quote unquote, gave up and just sat back and took more naps and took more vacations and just didn't care and walked away from the computer and literally barely subpar poked at what I was doing in a
Yep.
very forget life, I'm so tired of this type of way, like with humor, like
Yep.
is the exact moment I started making money and doing something
Yep.
with everything that I'd been
Yep.
doing 8 years up
Yep.
until that point.
Absolutely. Oh, I totally relate. And it's a fascinating thing to have that awareness of going, I mean, there's a lot of ways of seeing that, isn't there? It's like we are taught to function on that masculine energetic flow,
Yeah.
that masculine doing, productive, got to keep going, and that's what we've all been taught. We've been programmed to be
Hmm.
doers. We've been told that the less you do, then you're not going to get forward,
Hmm.
but it's totally mitigating away from the idea of the balance of your divine feminine flow. The fact of allowing things in, the fact of creating a space for opportunity and growth and abundance and magic, and it's interesting when you actually start diving in. And I do feel like more and more entrepreneurs are talking about this, of actually going, do less.
Hmm.
It's just reprogramming our brains of actually saying we've had it wrong all this time.
Hmm.
You know, I I homeschooled my kids, and it's funny because I was homeschooled at different parts of my life. And yet still, as I was homeschooling my kids, each one of them learning differently, each one of them having totally different needs, everyone having different processes. The thing that held me back the most was my own brain telling me that I had to have them achieve certain.
Hmm.
And it was fascinating. And that applies to so many things in my life. And it's important to actually be able to observe different parts of yourself and go, okay, yeah, my heart's ready to soar. I am like totally there. I'm the big dreamer. I've got all this. Like, I am ready to do my own course. I'm going to let it all flow. And then you observe your brain come in and go, but what are you going to do? How are you going to be productive? That's not going to work. Like, how are you going to achieve what you need to achieve? You're going to you just watch the difference. So important to be able to step back and observe that dialogue and actually then listen to your heart. Always listen. I don't know if you've ever heard of the Heart Math Institute.
I have. Yes.
Yes. Okay. So, and their study about the heart and how, the heart's messaging and their heart energetic field is so much stronger than the head.
Yes.
And yet we're taught to listen to the head, but really the messages are usually from the heart. And you just imagine, as soon as I heard that, I just imagined, your head receiving all of these messages. And it's like broken telephone. It's like, wait, I think I understand. And your heart's like, no, you didn't understand the message. It's like, no, you didn't get it. Stop
Mhm.
telling them what to do. Let me do it. So it's tapping into your heart and trusting that the key to finding that flow of being rather than the doing, but it's the
Yes.
key.
The
Yeah.
world doesn't operate on the logic that we think it does.
No,
And
no,
quantum physics itself, as well as the Heart Math Institute, are giving us the science to prove that all of the time. And everything's
all the
out.
time.
Nothing actually makes any kind of sense.
No. And to be fair to societies, they can't afford people to all be listening to their heart. They can't afford, like, there's certain, like, it's really, really like
It's
I
not
mean,
set up
I
like
don't know if they're going to have a choice. It's not. I think we're headed into a time. I think we're living in a time where everybody is actually, they're going to have to change things
yeah,
in order to create space. We are headed into that time. It's an exciting time to be alive
it
for
is.
that very reason. Because we are heading at a time where it's the smoke screen, the wizard is now, the curtain has been drawn. The wizard has stepped forward. This is not, it's not working anymore. So hence why it's more important than ever for every individual to find a way of being whole within themselves from the inside. It's not, it's not a it's not a playground anymore where it's like, oh well, I'll kind of tiptoe and go to my yoga class like once a week, and it's like a hobby. It has to be integrated. We're living in a very powerful time where systems aren't working. So you have to find your own inner system. You have to know your truths.
Yes, which means
So,
creating your own systems. There's a
mhm.
there's a story from the Mexican culture, I believe is what they said, about this fisherman who meets a businessman. And the businessman's like, "What do you do every day?" And the fisherman says that he goes out and he catches about 10 fish, and five of them feed his family, and the other five he sells. And then he goes home and spends time with his family and his wife, and he takes naps and just enjoys nature. And the businessman's, well, if you spent just 2 extra hours out here fishing more, you could get X amount of fish and take those into the city. And then you can sell those for more money. And then you can get a bigger boat, and then you can catch more fish. And it just compounds on itself until you become rich. And the fisherman's, well, like, what would I do then? And he's like, whatever you want. And he's like, well, that's what I'm doing now, is whatever I want. So we think that we have
Yeah,
to go through all of these processes and jump through all these
yeah,
hoops to make X amount of money so that we can have the freedom and space to have good
yeah,
relationships and hobbies and spend time doing the things that we love. And again, it's counterintuitive, but if you just prioritize your relationships and your health and the doing the things that you want first and let everything else conform to you and your needs and wants and desires, it will all work out. You're
it
probably
does.
not going to die. You might not have the most lavish of lifestyles, but in all honesty, you're going to have, the richest people on earth can be some of the most miserable people on earth because they've
Yep,
sacrificed all of the things that actually matter to them to gain all of this monetary material value. And that's not
yep,
what fills us up, even if we feel like it, because shopping does fill a hole within us usually, but it's temporary. It's not long
it's
lasting.
temporary.
It's like a shot of dopamine. It's a drug.
Yep,
It's not
yep.
long lasting.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's interesting how when you do prioritize those things, and then all of a sudden you listen to your intuition, because I think that's the thing that's really important to lean into. All of a sudden you listen to your intuition and you go, oh, actually, so this is what needs to happen. A story comes to mind where, we were living in Canada. We had a property out there. It was really quite run down. We were struggling quite a bit for money. It was things were just, we'd lived a great life there. We'd enjoyed it to a certain point, and then all of a sudden things went, just felt off. And we knew that we needed a different experience. So we're homeschooling. I started hearing about people world schooling, and I thought, well, that sounds like fun, which is basically basically homeschoolers who decide to travel and show their kids the world, while educating about life as they're experiencing life. And so we were, this little bird kind of just like chirped in my ear of like, well, that's interesting. So we started to just randomly watch travel videos, and we started exploring different places, and we started watching some TV shows about people who lived in in Greek islands and all these different things. And lo and behold, I find this great community online, this world schooling community based in Spain. And magically, impossibly, really, from that system, we actually found ourselves staying in, like, within, I think it was about 3 months, we found ourselves on a plane to Spain, moving the entire family, plus a dog and two cats, and moving into this beautiful Spanish villa overlooking the Med. like the Mediterranean Sea. And I looked, I was like, it was like, I felt like I just stepped into a magazine. It made no sense. But because of just listening to our intuition, following the flow, following how things went, would I have been able to plan that? No way. If you had said to me, do you want to go to Spain and live on the Mediterranean for a little while and be on this experience? I would have looked at you and gone, "Well, I'm not sure. I don't know if that's like in my path, and I don't know what I think about that." But because of listening to intuitive guidance and being aligned to ourselves, focusing on that alignment to joy in the moment, even though things were feeling bumpy at the time, and just kept focusing on that, therefore, then different experiences could come that led to something that felt like a millionaire lifestyle. I'm not going to say we were millionaires, we were by far from it, but it felt like it.
Yeah.
I kept taking pictures being like, what's that? So it's a fascinating thing what alignment can actually do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we have a tendency to think, well, you just focus on your own happiness. And it feels, I was just talking about this in my membership group, actually. We were talking about there's a difference between when you allow expansion, the frequency of expansion, knowing that you align to your inner self. And from that, then you accept expansion. You allow, you know that you're expanding, you know you're always growing, you're knowing things are going to change. And so you accept the expansion. The opposite of expansion is contraction.
Mm-hmm.
It means that you hold on. Now, when you actually say, I'm only going to focus on my happiness, I'm only going to focus on, my relationships. This is all perfect groundwork for expansion. As long as it doesn't turn into acceptance, which can feel, as long as it's like, well, I'm not going to focus on the money. I'm not going to focus on those things. I'm not going to focus on my growth. Then you feel the energy pulling back. So it's about how do you actually find expansion in all areas going, I'm aligning to my best life and the universe knows what I want.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, by embracing everything that I love and exploring the juiciness of all my relationships and the juiciness of all my experiences, I know that that's going to keep expanding and keep growing.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's an interesting exploration. We're in an interesting time where energy is like it feels more pliable. It feels more like you can sense what's expanding, what's contracting, what's growth, what's holding on. Where am I holding tension in my bodies? And where's my nervous system? And where am I not letting stuff in? I'm pretty passionate about that.
I do too, though. It's okay. I totally get it because it, using your muscle, I teach yoga, so I spend a lot of
Okay.
time trying to explain these concepts to people
Mm-hmm.
in a
Yep.
not scary woo-woo way.
Yep.
So,
It's all what I'm about.
muscle contraction is exactly one of those things that you can use too, because tense, stress, anxiety, you feel it in your muscles. Everything tenses up and is tight, and that constricts not only like the energy flow and everything that expansion that we're talking about, but from a more physical standpoint, think of it how it contracts blood flow and
Mm-hmm.
oxygenation and all of those things. It's all the same. Everything is across the board, no matter how you do it. So you want to, no matter how you translate it or identify it or try to box it. And
Mm-hmm.
so you want to stay relaxed. And I tell people, be a little delusional. It's okay. We think entirely too much, and most of our problems are created in our heads by
Mm-hmm.
thinking. So instead of do you want to move to the Mediterranean and being like, oh man, that sounds scary. How am I going to do that? What steps do I need to take? You just go, man, that sounds like a good time. And then you just kind of keep going and doing whatever you're doing. And if you
Yeah.
find yourself Googling things about it, then Google things about it. And if you don't, then don't. And it really is like if you just sit back and relax and try to have a good time and just,
Yeah.
yeah, that sounds great. Or, it's not,
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
you do kind of just get swept away in this unfolding of events that don't even make sense to
Yeah.
how they're unfolding. And that's the beauty is that you don't have to figure it out. It just
Yeah.
happens for you
Yeah.
if you let it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, and it's funny because that that's the key, if you let it. And knowing that, not being attached to the outcome of things, but knowing that things are conspiring anyway from that flow, and knowing that because you're taking care of where you are in your present moment, then you're navigating that. You're navigating your alignment in the moment, knowing that whatever will flow will be from that space, and you'll be able to deal with whatever because you're in alignment in the moment. I read an unbelievable statistic just this last weekend, actually. And I was like, that really probably very true, saying that our thoughts, 58 minutes out of every hour, our thoughts are either in the past or in the future. And I was like, I spent quite a bit of time like observing and be like, okay, wait, like, observing my thoughts and being like, where are we at? And I was like, actually, this is actually a very interesting space to take this, because it's very, very true.
Yes.
Because it's not just, the future isn't just what am I doing next week. The future is always like, even just that point of, oh, I have to remember that call I've got in an hour, or oh, I can't remember what should I have for dinner tonight. Like, even that, we're looking at actual future. And so it's actually a fascinating thing to observe. How aligned are you in the moment?
Mm-hmm.
How aligned are we in this conversation, without being like, oh, what are we saying in like 5 minutes? It's, where are we in this moment? How are we totally focused in that? It's an exciting, they say that moment of breath, right? That space between the inhalation and the exhalation. How do we actually function from that space?
The
It's
divine.
mastery,
Yeah.
but doesn't mean that we can't work on it. It's still, it's enjoying that present space, knowing that alignment in that present moment, you
Yes,
resonate as your whole self in that, and you're
and
good.
trusting however it unfolds to be possibly completely different than what you expected, and even
Mhm.
possibly a little messy in the beginning, because
Mhm.
we have this misconception that it's like, oh, but I'm doing all of the right things. I'm doing everything you said to do. I let go. I'm living in the moment as much as I can. Um, and all of these terrible things, like everything's falling apart. Explain that. And it's like, well, we can't know how things are going to unfold to get us what we want. And sometimes things have to fall away and fall apart to make room for other
Mhm.
things to come into being. So just because
Yeah.
things feel like you're going backwards doesn't actually mean that you are going backwards. You have to make a mess to clean a mess. You have a closet that's just jam packed full of stuff, and that you have because you stick it in there because you don't want to deal with it right now, right? And then that
Yeah.
closet is just so full, and one day you're like, okay, I'm going to tackle this closet. Well, you have to pull everything out and destroy the bedroom or even
Yep.
the whole house before you can put the closet
It's
back
true.
in an organized fashion. It trans
Absolutely. Absolutely. There was that great thing that during 2020, whenever with everything was just, falling apart globally, there was that great post that was going around that people just said that, a caterpillar literally has to turn to mush before becoming a butterfly. Like, everything has to
it's
break down
scary.
and break apart. It is scary. It's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It's not um and when you think of it, like let's go back to, our conversation about like the matrix, or what society expects for us, or the masculine energy concept of doing. Your brain's whole function is to keep you safe.
Yes.
Your brain wants balance. Your brain is sitting there saying, we've done this all our lives.
Hmm.
We've followed these rules, these concepts. And then
And
all
we
of a
didn't die.
sudden, I always compare it to like a cornfield. You've trampled down this cornfield, this one path through this cornfield for your whole life. And then all of a sudden you turn around and say, I'm going to listen to my heart, and I'm going to just show up whole, and I'm going to be integral to what feels right. That's another cornfield. Like, that's an entire different path through that cornfield. You can't, that takes trotting that down. It takes paving it out. And your brain goes, we have this corn path right here, which is well trotted. Why would you do something different? That makes no sense. So yeah, it gets messy.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Good.
our brains are not our friends. It gets messy and it gets uncomfortable. And there are times that you turn around and go, why am I doing this again?
Hmm.
You need as many tools in place as you can to keep reminding yourself of why.
Yeah, our brains do too good of a job in keeping us safe. I,
Hmm.
you know, and they'll go as far as to make sure we stay miserable because there's
Hmm.
safety in that. We have done
Hmm.
that our whole life and we have not died. And if you go do
Hmm.
that, we might die. And that's honestly a little illogical if you really break it
A
down,
little bit.
because it's like, okay, well, moving from one house to another is not going to kill me, but it sure feels like it will to your
Yeah.
brain and your body because your nervous
Yeah.
system is it developed back in, centuries ago, when we were still running from lions and
Yeah.
tigers, bears and whatnot, and we needed that. And the day-to-day life was pretty calm, pretty quiet. You really didn't venture a whole, because you didn't have cars or anything, so
Yep.
you didn't really venture
Nope.
out of too far of your area. So you knew that area
Yep.
really well. Everything was pretty well the same all the time. You could connect to the pattern. The only change was the seasons as they rolled around the earth.
Yep.
And nowadays things are a lot more rigid.
Yep.
Yeah, it's more right angles, which so our
Well,
nervous system gets activated whether it's the simplest thing or an actual problem.
absolutely. Well, and it's interesting because nowadays, more than ever before, um, your our brains are receiving information from everywhere.
Hmm.
Like they're continually receiving triggering information. They're continually feeling bombarded by different images. I mean, like you just scroll through your Facebook feed and you're going, what's going on? Well, unless you curate your Facebook feed, to make sure that it's a happy place. If you
Which you
curate someone
should.
else, if you go through someone else's, if I go through someone else's social media, then I'd feel triggered. But it's a question of, there's so many things that are bombarding you all the time. You have to be consciously aware of your emotional state and how you feel in your body. I mean, talking about different centuries ago, it's funny because a lot of people will talk about just basic energy work. We talk about the chakras and we talk about how, traditionally, you focus on, people always focused on the ground up, working through your chakras. It was like start with your root, bringing things down. More and more, you're seeing people shift that around and change it actually like starting from the top and actually putting a lot of emphasis on how do you get back grounded. And it's basically because we're not in our bodies half as much as we were. We used to work out in the fields. We used to be wholly present in our moments.
That's true.
We're not now. We're not actually in the present moment as much as we used to be. So we have to remind ourselves how to be human in a
Hmm.
lot of ways. So there's an interesting contrast between two times
Hmm.
of actually reminding ourselves that we're showing up whole in a totally different way now. There's a lot of information that we have to process, and all that information has to flow through us one way or the other, which is fascinating.
It is fascinating. And it's a lot
It
to
is.
process because it's constantly on nowadays.
Yeah.
Like the news, the social media, everywhere we look, there's constantly something or going on. And especially with we used to get our news, we had to come by like horse and buggy if we even got it. So we had no idea what was happening outside of our
No.
little outside of our little village.
Yeah.
And so nowadays people think it feels like things are more dangerous than what they used to be when we're
Hmm.
actually living in the safest time it's ever been in history, in recorded history.
Mm.
And but it's because we're seeing things every single day, multiple times a day,
Yeah.
horrible things, terrible things that are happening on the other side of the planet, which
Yep.
I don't advocate, and I always tell people I don't advocate for sticking your head in the sand, but I also don't watch the news. You
No.
don't you don't have to. If there's
No.
anything going on that you need to know about, people will make sure you know. But there's nothing you
Yeah.
can do about that baby that died over
No.
there. There's nothing that you can
No.
do about that situation that happened over there. Like all
No.
you can do
There
is
isn't.
on what's going on in your immediate life and vicinity right now. My grandfather's so into politics and the news. And I used to be, and me and him used to have some really heated debates about things, and he loves it. So now every time I see him, he tries to get me going. And every single time I'm like, look, I told you I am worried about and focusing on what's going on my one little acre of property. I
Yeah.
can't control anything outside of my one little acre of property. So I'm going to find
Yep.
my happiness right here.
Absolutely. And it's a fascinating thing how I think so many people are you can feel the energy pulled in all these different directions, and having your attention captured by whatever is happening in the world.
Mhm.
Um, and I mean, I have family who will continually try to grab me into those conversations as well. My main focus in all of this is quite frankly, I'm a big fan of Fred Rogers, Fred Rogers, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. Um, and Fred Rogers has a beautiful quote where he said, in any crisis, always look for the helpers. Just look for the helpers and put your attention behind the helpers. And when I actually thought about this, of what he was saying, I was like, you know what? This is it's such a deeper statement than what we give for. Because when you look for the helpers, where attention goes, energy flows. So
Mhm.
you're actually adding to the light to the world by looking for the helpers. If
Mhm.
you're watching the news, no one's reporting the helpers.
Never.
You don't see the helpers on the news.
Mm-mm.
If you are even on social media, you don't see the helpers. So
You have to
really it's
actively
in
look for them.
you have to actively look for them. And if you can't see them, then really the only question is, okay, is there any role in for me to be the helper? And you check in with your heart, not your head. This isn't like, oh, I'll just go do all these good deeds. No, you check in with your heart, you ask your heart, you make sure you're aligned to your whole self. And then you say, well, how can I be a helper? Being a helper might be, you know, usually with all the current wars that are, I'll go in and check on my friends of anybody that I know might be affected.
Mhm.
I'm not about, it's just literally anyone who's affected, because the people are not the wars. If there is a sickness, it's like, who's going to be affected? How do I help? How do I support? How do I share any love? And that's the extent of where I go. It's like, hey, I'm here to talk. I'm here to be with you if you need anything. When you decide to step into um, to align to being a helper, then all of a sudden you feel less powerless, because that's what's terrifying about so much of this. It's how the grabbed attention, it focuses on how to feel powerless. You feel powerless when your attention is grabbed elsewhere.
Mhm.
That captured attention, you know? So it's an interesting time, and there's so much to capture your attention right now. So again, why it's such an important time to get back to alignment and doing the inner work, because it's like being in a sieve. Your just energy's just leaking out all over the place.
Absolutely, because half of us want to, those of us who do want to help and want to make a
Mhm.
difference. And I love how you were like, check in with your heart, not your head, because then you'll be doing all of the things. And we are only one person. We cannot do all of the
Mhm.
things. We need to
Mm-mm.
be very picky and choosy about what we can do, because that's gonna, if we do too much, that's just gonna stress us out, and then we're actually adding to the problem instead of the
Yep.
solution, even if it doesn't seem related. Like, even
Yep.
if you did all of this charity work and you've done all of these events for 2 weeks straight, you've been every day, there's been an event or a function or something that you've been participating in, and then you go home and your kids miss you and you're snapping at them, and well, look at that, you're pouring bad energy into your children now, who are then going to grow up and pour bad
Yep.
energy to other people. And Mother
Yep.
Teresa said that if you want to change the world, go home and love your family. And
Mhm.
it's so important, because, and again, we internalize all of these things. So yeah,
Yep.
curating your social media feeds, please curate them. If they're making
Please.
you feel some type of way, then unfollow those people, block them if you need
Yep.
to. There's no reason we need to see the baby that died on the other side of the planet and then internalize it and
Yep.
take it into our own life and into our
No.
body. And then
Yep.
we're holding on to that stuck energy, and it's just mulling over in our heads over and over again. And
Yep.
then it becomes a physical ailment somewhere and
Yep.
it's causing problems.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if you do see something, then check in with yourself and find the space that you can just send love.
Hmm.
Send love. Ask yourself if there's any way you can help. Sometimes even the simple practice of surrounding someone in love. Like
Mm-hmm.
I'm in the UK, my family's in Canada. And my mom is 87 and she just fell as she twisted her ankle. And there was a few moments where, of course, sisters are getting together and everyone's talking about the what ifs, future, future, future. The what ifs. And I immediately jumped into that. I could feel my brain going, okay, wait, do I jump on a flight? My passport needs renewing. There was all this stuff. I could feel it. And then I stopped and I went, I can actually send her energy. I can do an energy healing on her. I can set up an energy grid for her. I can surround her in love. I can make sure she has, this and this, and I can keep checking in every day to see how things are going. I have a lot of information that can be shared. I also thought, would I be listened to if I was there anyway? And I was like, probably not.
I can relate to that.
so therefore then it was like, how can I be a helper rather than my brain being like, well, this is what you should do. And that's the thing is your brain functions on levels of shoulds. You're taught certain things that aren't actually yours.
Mm-hmm.
I always say there's like three different types of shoulds where there's the societal shoulds, the familiar shoulds, which are like from your family that you've been passed down.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the inner shoulds, the person that you are and the person you have to be. And they're not even shoulds. They're just inner callings. They're just integral. Ditch the rest. Listen to the integral. You don't have time for the other ones. They just don't. And if we talk charitable works or different things, when you're just running around doing all you think that you should do of what makes you a good person, you
Mm-hmm.
just get drained out. And the voice of those inner callings, the voice of your heart gets, quite frankly, quieter and quieter and quieter because you don't have any energy to put towards it. You can't give it any attention. There's no way you can hear it. So ditch the shoulds and get into the deep sense of inner callings and alignment. You find that you help people you didn't even know you could.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you do actually end up with the result of what you were craving, and that's really what we're saying in all of this, isn't it? It's like, get rid of what you think you have to do and
Mm-hmm.
stop pushing and actually get just focusing on alignment within yourself. And from there, then you will find that you do what you intended or wanted to do anyway.
Yeah,
It's a bit of a rewire.
there
Yeah.
are a lot less rules than what we think there are.
Oh,
And we have
yes.
all of the flexibility in the world, whether we think we do or we don't, because we're really good at making up excuses and reasons to why we can't. But we can make our own rules. We can make our own decisions. We can formulate, we can create our life, our reality to be whatever we want it to be. Whether that be a little delusional or not, it doesn't matter. It just matters that you're happy.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think immediately the brain for many people spits up the concept of, well, but what about people who don't have those choices?
Mm-hmm.
And you go, actually, everyone has the ability to focus where they want to focus.
Mm-hmm.
There is that, I can't remember his name. There's that really famous author who wrote while he was in a concentration camp.
Mm.
And he talks about how no one can take control over your,
Mm-hmm.
they can't control what you put your focus on. And he talked about how he cultivated this experience for himself. His name, I'm gonna get his name wrong, but again, I'm sure everybody knows who I'm talking about. So, but it's that whole concept of align within yourself,
Mm-hmm.
find the treasure within yourself,
Mm-hmm.
find the voice of your own heart. If you need, if you want to see it as something outside of you, connect to that God voice that is connecting within you. Talk to your angels, talk to your guides, talk to your ancestors, whatever you need, but allow that inner guidance system to be the strongest voice within you. And you said something really powerful where you talked about how, you might go into something and something feels really exciting. So follow the excitement. And if you start feeling like, I don't know, if someone mentions, why don't you go to the Mediterranean? And you're like, oh, I don't know about that. Not for you. There's no shoulds in like going to the Mediterranean like that. Listen to that as well. It's okay if
Mm-hmm.
that's not for you. So listen to that. it leads you on a wild ride.
Yeah,
Then you'll
focus
never,
focus on what you like and ignore the rest.
yeah,
Ignore the rest. You can actually, most people don't realize this, but you can totally take complaining completely out of your existence. You can just refuse to acknowledge anything you
yeah,
don't like's existence. And like just completely turn your back from it and be like, and sometimes, and I've been on the lowest of lows, I've been on the bottom. I understand how hard it is sometimes to find something that you like and something that you're interested, like you're just like, man, I hate everything. No, no, let's take a step back. It doesn't have to be as grand as we think it needs to be.
yeah,
They're like, practice gratitude. Well, there's nothing I'm happy about. uh, are you happy that you are able to breathe right now?
yeah,
Are you blind or can you see? Do your feet
yeah,
work? Do your hands
yeah,
work? Do your ears work? We're happy about that, aren't we? Because,
yeah,
everybody's had a stuffy nose where they couldn't breathe. And man, do we wish and wish that we could breathe. And
yeah.
but we forget to be thankful when we can.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'll have to say to people, just appreciate your pillow when you're lying in bed.
Hmm.
Like everybody loves that feeling of when you climb into bed and you drop into that space
Hmm.
and you burrow yourself under the blankets. Appreciate that moment. That is something to be so thankful for. You are not lying on the ground with a stone for a pillow. Like you have food in your fridge. It's like there are things to be deeply appreciative of. And it's amazing. As soon as you get on that train, it just grows and grows. And you watch, your brain might be like, no, 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 don't do that. Don't do that. We're in a bad space. Don't start feeling better. It is one of the things I loved about, being around young children is when you're around young children, you watch as they'll flip their mood on a dime.
Yeah.
They'll be like, I remember my daughter once being in a total meltdown space. And we started talking about like things that she could be appreciative of. I think we got like two things in. She's like, yeah, I'm fine. And she walked off. And I was like, oh, we don't need the actual processing. We can do that. That's amazing. I was like, I want to do that. Like, I was like worried about what other people would thought. They like, like if they all of a sudden I was like, oh no, I'm okay. It's like, people are gonna react badly. I was like, I can start this. This is okay.
Literally,
It's my natural state of being.
it's our
It
ego
doesn't have
that
to be
keeps
hard.
us. If we
Yeah.
get upset about something, we feel like we have to keep being upset about it.
Yeah.
Even if our insides were like, I'm kind of tired of being upset. Our ego would be like, no, no, you don't want to, because if you stop being upset, then they may think that what they did was okay, and it's not okay.
Yeah.
So you got to keep being mad. It's like, come
Yeah.
on, come on,
It's like let it go. And it's
where's
like,
your
well,
phone?
yeah, but if you're too happy too fast, then people are going to wonder what's going on. They won't be able to track it. You need people to like see your like
The
progressive
process.
feeling better. It's like that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
People don't need to understand me. It's such a liberating thing when you actually go, okay, I really don't think people are going to get most of my processing, and that's okay.
Mhm.
Just claim it. As long as you get it, you're fine. Your angels get it. Your guides get it. Spirit gets it. It's good.
Yeah. Abraham
Like,
Hicks talked about basking in these moments, and that's how you can make them
mm-hmm.
bigger. Because again, you use the 58 minutes in an hour, and we're only spending 2 minutes in the present moment. And you notice
Yep.
yourself being in the present moment, and you can find things to be thankful for in that present moment, or you find emotions that are feeling good. Bask in it as long as you can. Just like you're laying out in the sun on a warm summer day by the pool and you're basking in the
Yep.
sun, you want to bask in these emotions as often as you can. It doesn't matter. And
Absolutely.
it's like, oh, I shouldn't be basking. I should be getting up and doing the laundry. That laundry will be there. And as soon as you get done with it, there's going to be more. It's fine. It's a never ending
Yep.
battle, except what you
Yep.
can't do. Just bask in it for
Yep. Just bask in it and do whatever you need to bask in it. It's that Abraham Hicks always talks about that power of the 17 seconds, isn't it? That's
yeah.
like if you can just hold that frequency of 17 seconds, just bask for 17 seconds, you'll find that all of a sudden the next 17 seconds will be filled with new thoughts that actually lead to that same feeling. And you just need to allow that. Again, expansion is the expansion. And accept, like you're 100% right. Like I'm known for my lazy mornings, lazy, horrible term. But I love lying in bed. I wake up slowly. I like to encourage, like I decide how I'm going to feel in the day before getting out of bed. I like to make sure that I am savoring that feeling, making sure that I am whole before I hit the ground, because I know once I get up, once my feet are on the ground, the day's begun. But I
Mhm.
have that beautiful time. It took me years to actually give myself permission to
Yes.
not feel guilty, quote unquote, because everyone says, oh, you should be up really early and get up and go. I'm a night owl. I have to deal with it. That's fine.
Same.
It's like I like staying up late. And then I like having a lazy morning, lazy, quote unquote,
Mm-hmm.
where it's an easy wake up. So then when I'm up, I'm here,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
That's your best.
okay, I might need my cup of tea to fully be here, but meditation and go. But the other day I had to jump out of bed for taking my daughter to a train, and I came back. I was like, I got to go back to bed. I was like, because I am not present. My soul has not arrived. She's not here.
I have to do
So,
that
but you
a lot
have to give
too.
yourself permission to do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you
Every
have to. If you're not,
oh no, you're fine. You do have to.
yeah, no, you do. You have to. But that takes acknowledging. It takes knowing yourself of saying, am I here?
Mm.
And going, no, I don't function like this. Like, you do not want me to function like this. I'll tell like anyone who wants to meet early in the morning, it's like, you do not want to see me early in the morning. You will not see me. I will not be there.
Mm.
Everyone has to deal with it. Yeah.
Yeah, and you have to figure out what works for you in the sense that like my husband will be like, I think you need to go get blood work done and make sure that everything's okay because you're just I don't know, we're supposed to be able to XYZ and I'm like, I mean like I ZYX. Why I got to XYZ? It's totally
Yeah,
okay that I need to take breaks every now and then and because
absolutely.
he can just hit the ground and from start to finish from the moment he wakes up to the moment he goes to bed he's going without a breath and he thrives like that. If he ever stops he can't get back going and it's he loses his momentum and he can't take a nap. He'll start feeling bad. He'll start feeling like cloudy and foggy. Me, I hit the ground running and I run solid for about 2 or 3 hours. And then I need 30 minutes to do literally nothing. And then I can, and
Yep.
I used to fight it because people told me that's not how you're supposed to be. And if I fought it, I would be cloudy and groggy and
Yep.
just fall like tired and grumpy. But if once I stopped fighting it and I just allow
Yep.
myself that 20 to 30 minutes to lay in my hammock and do absolutely nothing, then I can jump up and hit the ground running for another 2 or 3 hours. And then I might need
Yep.
another 20 to 30 minute break. And then I can hit and I can function really well like that.
Absolutely. And it's amazing. It's so empowering when you actually find out that that rhythm is just your natural rhythm. I don't
Mhm.
know. I don't know if you've ever done your human design. That reminds me of
I
human
have.
design.
I don't know a ton about it.
Yeah.
I do have my chart.
Do you know what you are?
Generator. What are the? I
Are
can
you a
look.
projector? Projector, generator. I'm a projector. And so that's why I'm wondering if you're a projector, because that's very much the projector rhythm. Then there's manifesting generator, and there is, and I'm missing one of them.
Ah, here it is. I'm a generator. My strategy is to
Okay.
respond, not self-theme.
Yeah.
It's frustration. Inner authority is sacral. Split
Yeah.
definition.
Okay. So that's your so it's your sacral chakra probably that's keeping you in that state of flow. And so you need to be in that state of flow in order to keep moving. So it's always fascinating because I found that doing my human design was that final little push. I was always, no, this is the way it feels right to me. This is what feels alignment to me. It's coming from a place of alignment, so I have to do it this way. I was always like that, but there was still that little like, but nobody else is doing it like this. So is everything okay? And then when I finally had my human design read, and I was like, there it is. You see, that's why I function the way I function. And it was like this beautiful space where you just it was validation.
Right.
That's what it was. It was just the validation of like, okay, so my intuition spot on, and there are other people in the world that need those little breaks or that they need those little rhythms of how to work. Um, my brain still fights against it, and that's the fascinating thing, like my brain will function on this. What do you mean you're stopping work? Why don't you just squeeze out that last little,
You're almost
just
done.
do that one post, one more thing off the list. You can do it. And you're like, what are we talking about? Why?
Yeah.
I'll do so much better. No, no. That's it's a powerful thing to tell your brain.
I feel like we could go on for another hour probably quite
I
easily,
think we could.
but
Yeah,
instead I'll just
absolutely.
invite you to do another episode one day if you want to. This is
I would love to. You're a joy to talk to, and I think we could probably cover many, many more spaces. So anytime, absolutely.
absolutely, I agree. I agree. Because I have at least four more tangents in my head I would love to speak to you about, but I have to
That's
get
good.
off.
Write them down. We'll set up a time and we will go. I'm always up for a good tangent. Go for it.
So tell people how they can find you and what you have to
Yeah.
offer, whatever, whatever.
Absolutely. So my website's spirituallyweareliving.com. And I have a lot of different things on there from my one-on-one coaching to courses. I work on something of energy alignment where dividing up the four worlds of yourself. So that's another tangent we could always go on.
Dang, sounds like
Basically,
a
for
horror.
instance, your mental world. So talking about your brain, your nervous system, space. So your physical needs, so your physical world, and then your emotional world and your spiritual world. So I work a lot about different ways of aligning that. Therefore, that I've created a quiz that people can go on there and take, which is a fun quiz to just figure out what world needs aligning. So if your head's chattering around too much, then it will kind of tell you and then tell you how to kind of actually put that more in alignment so you're allowing you to show up whole. And there's also my podcast on there, but it's all on the website, spiritually where living.
Super cool.
And I'm always happy to talk to people too.
Well, thank you so much for being here with us today. I'm super excited to continue this elsewhere later.
I look forward to it. Thank you so much. Talk to you soon.